tunnel's a really important moment because the tunnel is the place where you get to feel out the other team.
I look at Carlos Valderrama, a Pibe, and I'm thinking, I haven't seen that much focus in a player and an athlete, ever. His eyes were like steel.
We realized right away that this was the game that we had to get it done.
The future of American soccer was really very much at stake.
But now we're playing against a team that has been picked as one of the favorites to win the World Cup, Colombia.
The favorite in the group had just lost their first game and needed to win this game to stay in it. If we beat them, we knock them out.
You know, we're out in California, there's 90,000 people, there's Colombia. They're picked to win a World Cup.
Our three guys were leading the charge for U.S. soccer in probably the biggest game in U.S. soccer history.
Colombia attacked early.
We don't give a shit. We got three guys from our hometown. I think we're going to win.
There was a small town where the people were sort of insane about soccer.
It's because they were beaten down. The people in that town felt maybe they had a raw deal or they had a tough deal. They were hard workers and blue collar and it was them against the world.
You see three players come from the same area, the same program, the same town, and they get to the big stage of playing in multiple World Cups. That, from a town of less than 35,000 people, is mind-boggling.
We started saying, well, what's going on in Kearny? Where's this place Kearny? What's Kearny producing? Maybe I would have been a better player if I grew up in Kearny.
Just outside New York City, in sight of the Empire State Building, but a world away, is Kearny, New Jersey, once called the cradle of American soccer. Immigrants came to work in the town's massive thread mills in the late 19th century, and they brought soccer with them. The game was soon sewn into the fabric of their everyday lives.
This is where that tradition began. On what is now a parking lot, used to stand Old Clark Field, a gravel field built by the owners of the Clark Thread Company for the people of Kearny.
Kearny is Soccer Town, USA because it has the passion, it has the culture, it has the history. Soccer has been in Kearny for as long as it's been anywhere.
I'm currently the 7th generation of soccer players in this country.
The immigrants that lived in Cooper's Block, that worked in the mill, were the pioneers. They were the originals. They're trailblazers of the game in the United States.
The working class occupations that brought people together and made them work very hard indeed, to the point where the relaxation that they needed, the entertainment part of their lives was so often centered around the soccer team.
My great-great-grandfather came over from Scotland to work in the mills, the ONT mills. He played in the first ONT game in 1883.
The first American soccer dynasty was the Clark Thread Mills team. ONTFC won the American Football Association Cup 3 times in a row from 1885 to 1887. The USA and Canada played an international friendly at Clark's Field in 1885, almost 10 years before soccer would officially make it to Brazil.
Jimmy Douglas loved soccer so much, he left school, didn't even make high school. He just went out and played.
My great-great-grandfather, Davy Brown, was a center forward for the New York Giants. In the 1926-27 season, he scored 53 goals. He was the first American homegrown soccer star.
Archie came from Glasgow, Scotland in 1910 and started playing professionally at the age of 14 for the Scots American. After scoring 67 goals in 44 games, people began referring to Archie Stark as the Babe Ruth of American soccer.
I always had a great bunch of boys playing with me, and they almost put it in your pocket.
Archie Stark and Davy Brown played for the national team several times. And when the USA sent a team to the first World Cup in Uruguay in 1930, the attacking duo were among 4 local players invited.
Archie declined an invitation to the first World Cup as he was starting a business back at home, and at the time, being the first World Cup, I don't think anyone really knew what it was all about.
My grandfather, Jimmy Douglas, produced the first World Cup shutout in 1930 against Belgium. The score was 3-0.
Jimmy Douglas earned another shutout against Paraguay. Tom Flory, a midfielder from Harrison, captained a team that finished in 3rd place. Fleury played again in 1934 in Italy, but the most famous World Cup result for the U.S. was its shocking 1950 upset of England. That would also mark the national team's last appearance in the tournament for generations. In Kearny, though, immigrants kept coming. And when they arrived, they sought out 2 things: work and soccer. Ethnic teams and leagues thrived.
Soccer was very ethnically driven at that time. Either you played for the Scots or the Italians or the Germans, or the Brazilians, or you played for teams that you had some affiliation with.
Because we played the Roma, we played the Maritimo, the Germans, the Irish, so we played in the World Cup every week. It was great,
There was no other town in America that had that. They would have 3 generations of people who had played and had those stories of, being the hero in the game or being the GOAT, and they had that.
Though soccer continued to thrive in Kearny, the rest of the town was experiencing tough times. By the 1970s and 80s, the mills, which had once had the power to pull thousands across an ocean, had closed. Along with unemployment came alcoholism and drug abuse.
I mean, we could go through a laundry list of guys that are no longer with us, that were guys that got caught in the trap, the small town trap, and got caught up in the booze too much or the drugs.
In the late 1970s, Kearny was the #1 heroin outlet in the metropolitan area.
We were just hardened by the environment around us. We had no choice but to go meet the environment.
Are we going to get lost in Kearny? Or are we going to find our way through the game of soccer?
Down at the Scots American Club, several fathers decided to create a youth soccer club for the boys and girls of Kearny.
Well, we chose Thistle because it was a flower of Scotland.
Thistle FC, the Thistle Football Club, not the Thistle Fish and Chips, which was up the road.
All these coaches that were there because they were volunteer, because they loved the game, and they passed that love on to us.
In any societies, great athletes come from places, whether it's a local gym, a YMCA, or some kind of small functional place for the kids. This was the epicenter for us.
We had these parents that cared about us. And so they saw us growing up like the Lost Boys or the outsiders, and they thought, we got to keep them in soccer because that'll keep them organized and disciplined.
Youth soccer didn't exist yet, really. I mean, it really wasn't, the youth soccer we see today, that it's so organized and so vast. It was just beginning in those days.
When we played for Thistle, we came into a bar to meet as a team of 12-year-olds. The bar was covered in smoke. Guys were all cursing at each other, talking about soccer, telling stories about the past.
Whole nother world when you walk through the Scots Club.
I walked in there and it was soccer games going on the screen on a Sunday morning, and we had a meeting place, kids playing pool, kids shooting darts at the dartboard, dad sitting at the bar, just hanging out watching the game.
For me, going into the Scots American Club was like a second home. You grow up in the Scots American Club.
I had a VW bus, and I had 14 kids in the VW bus.
2 tons of steel running up the highway, with a bunch of Kearny kids that are off of their head as it is. It's a day out for us. We're getting to ride up the highway today.
Part of the event was, the journey to the game. We'd start to sing songs and make up songs about the driver.
Nobody wanted to play fucking Kearny back in the day. We loved to go to rich towns. Oh, let's go there and fuck that town up. All the little rich kids run around, well, we're playing Kearny. We were the dirtbags. I hate to say it, but everybody considered us dirtbags, lower class.
It was a tougher neighborhood. You rolled into the Gunnell Oval, and there was just field after field, and it was just packed with kids, and you knew that this was a soccer hotbed.
You come back, you want to go down the basement in the Scots American Club and take a shower. The stairs are old, busted concrete on the way down. When you get down there, it's all the bar equipment that maybe was from the 1960s that's still down there. It was an absolute mess.
We had to dress down the stair, which we called the dungeon. We were lucky to get out of that. I don't know how they made it.
It was at Thistle FC that John, Tab, and Tony first became teammates. John joined at the age of 6, playing for his father. He often got hand-me-downs from his older brother, Jimmy.
I was a small runt, and my brother was like 6'2", 6'3", and coming out of high school, and his shoes were big. So I had to stuff them with newspaper. And it didn't help my touch, but that didn't give me any excuses. They were all like, just get on with it. Those are the boots you're wearing, and suck it up and get on. And then that's what you did. You found ways of surviving.
He lives the same distance from St. Cecilia's Wall as I do, but in the opposite direction. So every day we would meet, we would call on the old school phones, call to say, hey, I'll meet you up there at 5 to 8. He was always late, to be honest with you. He was probably fixing his hair.
That's where a lot of our friendships started, on the soccer field when we were young. We went from recreation to Thistle, and there was always just that drive. So you knew at that time that John was a very special player.
First of all, I'd like to introduce the trio, the Poison Pygmies. Number 1, John Harkes.
He's never nervous. He's never scared. He's always got this aura of, I'm just gonna win. He had this crazy confidence about himself.
He was a little guy, extremely skillful, and he played the game like the right way, and I thought, wow, it would be so great to have him on my team because we could combine and nobody would be able to stop us.
As John Harkes was beginning to make his name in the area, word got out about another soccer phenom, a recent arrival from Uruguay who had been playing down in neighboring Harrison. He was shy, quiet, and angry that he had come to the United States.
Soccer was my friend, soccer was my life. Soccer was everything to me. I remember telling my dad when I moved here that of all the countries in the world, why did I have to move to the country that doesn't have soccer?
Tabaré Ramos, he was, I think, maybe 10 or 12 years old when he came over here, and he was playing down in the courts in Harrison. There's a kid down here, he said, he's unbelievable. He said, you've got to come down and see him.
Kearny had the best players, and they took me on a trial to Thistle, and I remember showing up and they put me in at center forward.
So all of a sudden at practice one day, Bobby Craig says, this is Tab Ramos, he's gonna be joining our team. And we're all like, oh, who's this kid? And after 5 minutes, we're like, yeah, okay, we'll take him, coach.
Within about a minute, you saw that he was good.
This is a good way for me to make new friends. I've been pretty much alone for the past year and a half, trying to find my way through soccer, and fortunately, maybe this would open the door.
Like a modern day Messi, he would beat 3 or 4 or 5 guys on a dribble, chip the keeper. We're just looking at each other like, this is insane. Like, who is this guy?
The one culture that we had on the field was soccer. And so regardless of where they were from, they had a passion for the game, and that's something that I had. So there was that immediate connection. So I became the wee man.
Mr. Magic, Tabaré Ramos.
Tony Miola was also the son of immigrants.
There was a complex being built in Kearny, and was an opportunity for my dad to own his first house and only be just a couple miles away from where he had just opened up his barber shop. And he decided that Kearny was going to be where we landed.
Tony's nickname was Meatball. He had that nickname, obviously being Italian. We'd go to his house and his mother would cook. She made some great meatballs, so it seemed to stick.
My mother was Mama Meatball when she came to me. My mother loved it. I hated it. But she thought it was the coolest thing when they would say, hey, Mama Meatball, how you doing, you know? And
became a goalkeeper because he was the big guy. He was the biggest guy, and we didn't want him in the park, so stick him in goal, and it turns out he was pretty special.
With John, Tab, and Tony on the team, Thistle FC won state cups and traveled abroad to compete. And the boys got a glimpse of where their talent could take them if they could avoid the Kearny trap.
More guys would have made it if they could have taken a little of the Kearny out of themselves. You know, some of the influences that we brag about and think are great were also hurtful to someone who wanted to be a professional athlete, for certain.
In a tough neighborhood, there's access to alcohol, drugs, things like that. Players that were older than I had been fantastic players, but you could see maybe their careers or those opportunities, windows of opportunity closed because they didn't take the right path.
Sad to say, out of the team that I took to Scotland, I think there's 4 or 5 of the kids that are not here anymore. You really get to know them, as your own children, so to speak.
Soccertown, USA also birthed a vibrant street soccer scene. On most nights, hordes of players trekked to an asphalt playground where they played pickup games for hours. It was a testing ground where skill and passion mattered. It was a place where players were forged in the cauldron of competition.
We had training at Thistle every Tuesday and Thursday, but we played soccer 3 times a day before we even went to training. We played before school started, we played at lunchtime, and then we played after school. We played so much pickup. There was always a place to play.
We were always playing 5-a-side, small-sided soccer, so there was no hiding out there. You had to participate, you had to be involved in the games. If you were hiding, you're gonna get exploited, you're gonna lose.
That's a major difference in what we do today. There's no pickup. Where back then we lived on it, where winner stayed on, so that competitiveness, that edge, that drive to win, one of the greatest things we learned in Kearny.
We all kind of lived in different neighborhoods. So I was in the Hoyt Street playground. John Harks, Mike O'Neill were in the Washington schoolyard. Billy Galka, Thomas McEwen were up at the Schuyler School playgrounds. And Mike would always kind of pick the best player from each one, and we would go down the courts from there.
My nickname was Make a Deal O'Neill. That was the nickname they gave me. And I got that nickname because I made things happen.
Mike O'Neill was called Pinky because he was pink when the sun came out.
Mike O'Neill started making the phone calls. We're white. And we go white, and then there would be a group of us together, and that was the chemistry that day.
I would reach out to players and say, look, we're gonna be in purple today. So we'd show up in purple, and that would be our team. So we would step on the court and kick ass all day, and then we would walk off.
Where I lived in Kearny was a 2-mile trek down to the courts, and it was no soccer moms then. We hoofed it.
But people came from everywhere to play, and it was all ages. And it was a place where you really had to survive.
When school got out, it was religion that you went to the courts at night.
It's 20-foot high fences on concrete, so it's like going into the Thunderdome.
Inside the cage where one team wins and the other team walks.
It was a very rough and ready place, and it was highly competitive. It was winner stay on.
If you could make a name at the courts, you knew that you were doing the right thing.
You want to be king of the court, that night, that day, whatever you're going down. You didn't want to get off because you knew you're going to be waiting a long time to get back on.
I probably learned more about competing before I was 10 years old than I did any other stage in my career. That's where the foundation of competing came for me, and never wanting to lose.
Playing up and competing and winner stay on mentality, I mean, that was just it. That was the game.
We definitely were playing with holes in our sneakers, very similar to playing in the barrios in Argentina or the streets in Glasgow or wherever it is. All the best players in the world always come from those environments, don't they? Because they're the hungriest guys.
The biggest thing about Kearny, how we learned to win, was competing against each other. We basically kicked the shit out of each other in the schoolyards.
It wasn't uncommon that you were walking off the field with really, banged up elbows and knees and raspberries on the side of your hips from guys slide tackling on concrete. It was absolutely insane, but, the magic comes from those moments.
I credit a lot of my development to the Harrison courts, playing with no coach.
This was an invention, a creation, an activity, an enjoyment of the kids themselves. They selected the teams, they made up the rules, they decided who was doing it wrong and who was doing it right.
No one forgets those days. I've played games that I guarantee you I've forgotten in my professional career, and I can tell you just about everything that happened at the courts.
Over and over, the cycle continued. Play, pass out, eat, wake up, phone calls. What colors are we wearing? What t-shirt are we getting on today? Do you have one in your drawer? Dig it out. Steal your brother's. Whatever you gotta do. Let's get out there and play.
The boys grew up on club ball and street soccer, but they all dreamed of wearing the cardinal red of Kearny High.
When we grew up, it wasn't about football or basketball in our town. Soccer was the cool thing to do.
I don't think I had any friends that weren't soccer players. And I don't think I really hung out with anybody that couldn't play. In the 80s, high school soccer was everything.
I had a motorcycle in those days. When I got on a motorcycle and headed for Kearny or Harrison to see one of those high school games, because they were so much more real, and I felt so much closer to the game as I'd understood it.
In the opposite way now, with this wind at their back, they're going to have difficulty coming back. You know where their weaknesses lie? That right back on their side is extremely weak. Goalkeeper's very weak.
We played at Franklin Field when I was in high school. That also, like the courts, had like a 30-foot fence around it. And inside the confines of the fence was this really beat-up field.
They definitely drank, they spit, they yelled, they knew everybody's name, and it would even get slightly violent.
But Kearny Harrison, that's your border. That's your town next over. And so bragging rights were huge with that.
It's probably not a greater rivalry in the game of soccer anywhere in the country.
Okay, this is the mecca of soccer. Harrison and Kearny, two great teams with long tradition.
We're in the middle of the bus. No one's sitting. We're all standing up, and we're rocking the bus and swaying the bus back and forth.
And the bus would be going side to side, and the bus driver would be going crazy, like, you're gonna tip this thing.
And it's just this humming, this reverberation of Kearny. It's just haunting. And it just gets louder and louder as we get closer to the stadium. And by the time we pull up and that door opens, we are screaming Kearny at the top of our lungs.
I would think that the perception when we rolled into town was probably, I hate these guys.
Kearny.
I hate these guys.
Fucking nightmare.
Get off the field! Please get off the field! Get him off the field, jeez!
So it got to the stage where our athletic director at Kearny High started getting upset about it. So he put an article in the paper, we don't need any more hooligans. This is not who we are as Kearny.
That was like adding gasoline onto a fire, because from that point on, they called themselves the hooligans. They made up t-shirts, they made up banners, and for us, it just made it more exciting.
In 1982, Kearny High played in another state final. Two 8th graders, Tony Miola and Sal Rosamilia, traveled on a fan bus to Princeton University.
We got out of school early. The game was probably 2 o'clock in the afternoon down in Princeton. An hour-plus ride on the bus, singing songs, having a keg of beer in the back.
We learned more on that bus maybe than we've learned the rest of our life.
And Tony and I are sitting there like, you know, two awestruck kids. What are we doing here? But we were thrilled that we weren't in school.
There were kegs, there was food, there was singing, and there was anger in their voice, you know, about the game. And
we would overtake stands at every away game that we were ever at. It's just a sea of Kearny.
We would play away and have more people there than the home teams did. It was like we never played away.
Big one, the Week 4 matchup. Freehold Township taking on the Cardinals of Kearny. Kearny at 21-1-1 on the season. Freehold Township at 22-1. Joe, the two teams appear to be very well evenly matched.
Pristine Princeton University, and the hooligans show up behind the goal of the guy from Freehold.
Let's get down to the PA announcer right now.
Starting goal, Grant Pearson.
Everybody piles off the bus, immediately finds the other team's goalkeeper. And we all, hundreds of us, rows deep, sit behind the goalkeeper as he's warming up for the game.
They find out the goalkeeper's name is Pearson, and the chance went from there.
The worst thing that this kid ever did in his life was have his name on the back of the jersey. Second worst thing he ever did in his life was have 00. So it was easy.
I chanted Pearson sucks for 4 quarters in the game.
In between quarters, they would march directly across the field with their kegs of beer, with their Scottish flags, with their American flags, and their Kearny flags.
We followed them from goal to goal.
We chanted Pearson sucks and he's a zero.
Stop it was like 200, 300 people marching across the field.
Now it's Bill Mills for Kearny, taking on Grant Pearson in a penalty kick. 9:36 to go. Here it comes. And Kearny leads it 1-0 as Mills tucks it away in the corner.
Goes right along with that whole Kearny attitude. Just came in and owned the place somehow. The fan is the 12th player. And so that Kearny Army, wow, it was always the 12th player.
And if you see the footage, I'm sitting right next to the goal. I can't get any closer. Hey, Grant, if you're out there, man, I hope you're all right, buddy. I hope you're doing okay.
Kearny High won state titles in 1981, 82, 84, and 87. The undefeated 1984 team finished the top-ranked team in the country.
There was the excitement of being undefeated, the excitement of being #1 in the country. We hop in the bus, we make our way back to Kearny. We come off the turnpike, there is a police escort waiting for us.
We get off 15W, we think we're getting arrested, like, all right, who's doing something? We're looking around the bus like, you know, who got in trouble today?
Bring us into Kearny, take us up and down Kearny Avenue where people are waiting and cheering the team on. And
The kids surely probably had a party somewhere.
the plan for the night was that we were gonna have a big party in the meadows behind the Gunnell Oval. Not the safest place to be partying, it's all basically chemical dumps.
Lighting a big bonfire, hanging out, kicking a ball around, telling the stories about the game, who scored, how they scored. Oh, remember that run up the side? Unbelievable, that ball. Who wants that feeling to end?
We're singing like crazy, all the cheerleaders are out there, we're all having our solo cups of beer from the keg, and we're having a great time.
There's probably enough kids there with a good head on their shoulder to keep it safe.
all of a sudden, the fire starts.
One of our freshman players, Tommy Mara, decides that it's a good idea to try to start a bonfire with a mattress.
This is the police show up, and what they recognize is that it's the Kearny soccer team. When they realize it's us, they just make sure we're okay, and off they went.
But Tommy Mara, unfortunately, had to go on the lam for a couple of days. He wasn't in trouble with the cops, but everybody else was really pissed off at him because the police took all our beer that night.
The following year, 9th graders Tony and Sal joined the varsity team and helped continue Kearny High's dominance as they split time in goal. Tony was also an excellent field player, so when he and Sal were seniors, the All-American goalkeeper let his best friend play in goal. Tony played striker and led the state in scoring. Kearny High School had gotten the best players from Thistle and the courts, and now they were the best in the country. With the Kearny Army behind them, they were ready for their next challenge.
We are the boys of Kearny, we aren't very neat.
We never wash our underwear, we never wash our feet.
We carry knives and pistols and other weapons too.
We're the boys of Kearny and who the hell are you?
So who the fuck are you? Doodle-doo, 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 doodle-doo.
The dream was to play professionally for the Cosmos in Giant Stadium. The Cosmos country phenomenon of the old North American Soccer League hit Kearny hard.
There's a festive atmosphere at Giant Stadium as a Soccer Bowl record throng of almost 75,000 turns out to see the Cosmos meet an old nemesis, the Tampa Bay Rowdies.
If you take the back roads from Kearny, you're really only 5-10 minutes away from Giant Stadium. Just down the road, I have the mecca of soccer in this country.
And so it was a world all-star team coming together and playing in our backyard. How lucky were we?
The Cosmos was the dream for us. Cosmos, to play in Giant Stadium, to play in a packed stadium, which was essentially our home. That was the dream.
We had the best role models you could ask for as street soccer players. And we would all just go back to our playgrounds afterward and pretend we were those guys. So it wasn't uncommon after a Cosmo game, we'd all go back to our local playground and I was Carlos Alberto for the day. Whoever claimed it first was Pelé, you know, like.
That had a massive influence on me as a player, because I thought, one day I want to do this.
I thought personally, why not me next? I'm sure John thought the same, and Tab and 100 other guys that played in Kearny thought the same thing. Why not me next?
Truth be told, lots of American kids didn't play in the NASL a league dominated by overage foreigners. Some called it the Non-American Soccer League, but 4 locals made it, including Harrison's David Dorico, as well as Kearny's Eddie Austin, Santiago Formoso, and Hugh O'Neill. Santi and Huey grew up together on Highland Avenue. In 1976, the neighbors both played for the Hartford Bicentennials and lined up against Pele's Cosmos at the Yale Bowl.
I didn't start that day, and once I came on, they were chanting my name, and opportunity presented itself, and I was able to knock one into the net. And on my way back to the center circle, Pele rubbed my head and said, "You did good, boy."
And this crowd has their own chant. They're chanting Huey, Huey, and it sounds a bit like they might be booing, but it's not. It's Huey.
After their time together in Connecticut, Hugh moved on to the Memphis Rogues, but Santiago returned home to play for the Cosmos. He got to live the dream of every local kid who ever set foot in Giant Stadium and played on Kearny Day.
Kearny Day was the biggest event. I mean, because not only did the families and all the dads that coached us and helped raise us, the whole Kearny came over, busloads, cars, caravans, whatever it was, and just took over the parking lot section.
We met in parking lot 13B and we hung out and played soccer 2-3 hours before a game. I'd like to think we kind of invented tailgating at soccer games.
Formoso was left back for the Cosmos on Kearny Day, and the Cosmos won 3-2. Who scores the game-winning goal? Santiago Formoso. You could not have written a better script.
I said, I have to do something special because I felt like this was not just a soccer team. This was something else. It's just the Rolling Stones on tour, you know, and the Grateful Dead combined.
Someone would get the word out that like, oh, Santi's coming by this town to go visit his aunt or whoever it was, and we're like, we see him, and there's his car, and it was a big flash, you know. It was all about, look at Santi, his hair's flowing everywhere. He was like a rock star for us.
And I'd wait for his black Corvette to come down the block, follow it for about a block and a half, wait for him to park, say hello, get an autograph. The fact that Santiago Formoso lived around the corner from me, growing up, it was inspiring to me as a player.
To have this in your backyard for a kid growing up in Kearny must have been heaven. It had to be. And I think that's what encouraged them to play.
When I was a senior in high school, I was drafted by the Cosmos. Here I have my opportunity in front of me to finally go pro, which is what I had wanted since I was 7 or 8 years old.
But it was not to be. Although he trained with the club at Giant Stadium, the team would fold along with the rest of the NASL a year later in 1985. Tab never played for the Cosmos.
The sport has just taken off, and I've grown to love it, and so has everybody else. And then all of a sudden, a couple of years later, the NASL and the Cosmos just no longer existed.
When the Cosmos were it, you felt like soccer in America was taking off. And then all of a sudden, it went away, and there was no real pro league, and a lot of us kind of got left behind.
We played since we're 5, 6 years old. And there wasn't a time we didn't have a soccer ball when we were kids. Could these guys be right? Are we foreigners? Are we misfits? Do we not belong? And it was really, really sad. It's hard to explain how sad it was, huh?
The dream was over, and we were going to be stuck playing at the courts for the rest of our life.
With no chance to go pro, Tab, John, and Tony went to college, but they continued to play for youth national teams, and all three earned a call-up to the senior men's side in the summer of 1989.
What was left after the early 80s was only the national team program. The ultimate goal was to be a player for the national team.
They scouted the best players they could find from that generation, the generation that unfortunately got almost strangled at birth.
Tab and I experienced playing in the 1983 Youth World Cup together. Already he was a star player at that stage. We then adopt John Harkes. Where's he from? He's like, Kearny. Isn't that where you're from? I was like, yeah, I'm from Kearny. Like, there's another player from Kearny? We don't even know where Kearny's at.
We had no pro league, so that was a real detriment to us. A lot of good players that played indoor soccer did not want to come out and play for the national team. It was a $5 a day per diem, and then it grew to 10 to 15.
Lack of resources, lack of funding. You know, there wasn't a lot of money there and stuff, but to us, it didn't bug us. I mean, because we already grew up with that in our own system.
While John and Tab left semi-pro teams to join U.S. Soccer full-time, Tony was starring at the University of Virginia. In the summer of 1989, a series of injuries left the national team in need of a goalkeeper. John and Tab put in a word for their old friend and teammate.
I had a much bigger advantage walking into the national team than either Tab or John did, because they were walking in blind. I was walking in with two guys that I'd been playing with for a lot of years.
We started saying, well, what's going on in Kearny? Where's this place Kearny? What's Kearny producing?
Back at the Scots American Club, proud townsfolk raised pints to our half of the national team and joked, there must be something in the water. The young USA squad inched closer to World Cup qualification by November 1989.
In for Murray. Left it for Ramos. Shot. Score! Ramos!
This was the battle for the last spot in the World Cup. And here we are with an opportunity in 90 minutes to do something that hadn't been done in this country in 40 years.
The scenario was the same as the courts. Trinidad was win or you go home.
And it all came down to a must-win game in Trinidad and Tobago.
As soon as we landed, you could see there was a 3-day national holiday celebration festival. The whole nation was in red.
This is the most important thing to us in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. And we're here to support it with everything, heart and soul.
They already were on the Monday declaring it a national holiday because their anticipation of getting the necessary result to go to the World Cup in Italy. That was a given.
So we had 2 nights of partying outside the hotel, and our rooms being right at ground level. You couldn't sleep, earplugs at night, and asked to change rooms, and it was the most uncomfortable they could possibly make us.
They opened the gates at 10 o'clock in the morning, and the people went in there and were partying up. And when the real people came for the tickets, they couldn't get in the joint. And there were soldiers knocking them off the walls and climbing over.
We like a good party. We do. We like to party. And I think because the country never experienced it yet, I think we all start celebrating before we even play the match.
By the time we arrived, the stadium was packed. There were people trying to sneak in every which way. It was just absolute chaos.
Our bus is completely surrounded by a sea of red. There's nowhere to go. And I've got people screaming at me. I'm thinking, man, what a task this is to get done.
The scene in the stadium was unbelievable. There was a lot of pressure on the US team. There was a stadium full of Trinidadians. It was parents and friends of the players who went there.
The friends and family who couldn't make it to Trinidad and Tobago made their way to the Scots Club to watch the game on TV. No one played darts that day.
So this place was packed, you barely could, find a spot to stand up in, and, the whole crew was here.
They were always with us in spirit. Everywhere we went, they were with us. And so, yeah, we played for ourselves to win and to be successful, but we were also playing for them all the time. And when you play for somebody else, that can sometimes push you on to greater heights.
This is the most important 90 minutes in the history of the players on the U.S. national team.
Now it's really a test. The test of very young men in very, very intimidating circumstances. Do they have the courage, the determination, and those kinds of American competitive qualities? Will they work here today?
I really wanted the ball, so I come over to the other side of the field. I receive, throwing from Brian Bliss.
It said you must wear red or you wouldn't be allowed to enter the stadium, because that's all you see here. It's just a sea of red. Ramos putting it in to Caligiuri.
The field is a shithole, it's a cow pasture, and the ball's bounce, and we're like, oh, what's he gonna do with it? He's probably gonna give it away.
Because the ball is bounced, he takes a touch forward, and then he unleashes this shot.
Beats the first man, a left-footed shot!
Well, if you really want to be honest about it, I'm saying to myself, what's he doing? He shouldn't shoot from there, it's too far.
I struck it well, I knew it was on goal, I knew it was had a chance.
A left-footed shot! Paul Caligiuri has scored a goal! The USA lead 1-0!
There was this immediate, eerie feeling in the stadium where it just goes quiet.
the place going ballistic. Hey, we're going.
That might be the shot heard around the world.
Me and Gaka called it the shank heard around the world because he did shank it. Hopped up on his, who cares? We're going to the cup. Who gives a crap if it hit off whatever part of his body? We're going.
Hey, Thomas, I didn't shank that shot.
Caligiuri took that ball with the left foot. When I seen it going in the back of the net, I says, here we come, World Cup.
Ramos at the 31st minute are trying to hold on and go to Italy, and they do! The USA has realized a dream. They will qualify for the World Cup in 1990. Unbelievable.
It was surreal. When the referee blew the whistle and the game was over, you don't even know what to think. There's a sense of relief, sense of accomplishment, sense of, let's go to Italy from here.
Gosh, that was the most important game for us because it did change our lives. That was the beginning. That was the launching pad of let's get soccer back again.
So after the match, the door swings open and the guy comes in and said, how'd the U.S. make out today? The bartender says, the boys done brilliant. They beat 2 countries in 1 day, Trinidad and Tobago.
This video features the USA World Cup soccer team who've made the World Cup for the first time in 40 years. Hooray!
First time in 40 years we're here. The object is clear and victory here. Yeah, it's in the air. Can't you tell? It is such a sweet, sweet smell. The USA, we're going all the way. We didn't come to fool around. We're here to play. So let's get busy and let's work together. Good results, strong endeavor. It took us one more, plus one more. Now that you ask, not at the door. It took us a while, but we're here, so what's up? We plan to go home with the World Cup.
Yes, screamed the Soccer America cover. The global soccer community now had to welcome the USA to the biggest party on the planet. But it gave a bunch of college kids no chance at survival. Facing Italy and Rome, people said, would be like throwing the young Americans to the lions. They would be torn limb from limb.
Every time we went and played internationally, it was always a curiosity. What is the U.S. team like? How good are these guys? Can they play? What are they doing across the pond over there? Do they play? They don't even call it football. They call it soccer.
The 1990 World Cup really felt like we were a tourist and won some sort of fantasy competition in which you get to actually play against all the best players in the world.
We sent essentially a college team to the World Cup.
It wasn't even a question of them being not good enough. It was a question of being totally inexperienced in the adult world of professional soccer. First game was a disaster.
Counterattack from the United States. Tab Ramos being jerked around out there, no whistle from the official.
We were taking on the big Czechs, and they were massive and strong and busting out of their shorts and their shirts.
And we learned we can't be naive. We can't make mistakes and not pay for them.
And here we are, this is a long way from the Kearny courts.
And then we got to play Italy. First thing that comes to mind is, who's my dad going to root for, at this point? Who is he going to root for when we're playing Italy at the World Cup?
They were far more experienced, extraordinary players. That was very much walking into the Roman Coliseum.
Felt like the gladiators going in there, and the Italians were the lions. They threw us into that arena. I really thought they were going to eat us up that night.
Going into this game last night, he said we're going in with a defensive strategy. I think at halftime 0-0, that would be a moral victory. So maybe we should redefine what victory is today for the U.S. team.
The disparity in talent was extraordinary. The gulf in experience was just ridiculous. I remember feeling a sense of dread before the game, like absolute dread, like we're going to get killed.
Throughout the first half, the game threatened to turn into the predicted blowout. But a missed penalty kick by Italy allowed the U.S. to go into halftime only down 1-0.
But the goalpost saved Vialli's penalty, and Italy's swagger lost its confident stride.
Now it's time to show up big time. What's our response going to be? Playing against Italy. What's the response? Because it was a game that would turn us around again. That would give us a respect back again.
We didn't do good. We did great for where we were at that time, and Vermes almost scored, right?
There's that sequence where we almost score and Zenga saves the ball with his backside. And
I had him in the backhand and sat there. I was going to jump in the stands myself, but
America was out, but had shown some promise for the future.
The most important game for our team to think that one day we could compete with the rest of the world.
The U.S. players got a standing ovation after the game. And I remember being in restaurants in 1990, being proud to be an American. You know, we almost won. We almost scored it.
The USA finished their World Cup with a loss against Austria, but the results in Italy mattered little to the people back in Kearny.
I had no idea that the streets would be lined with people leading into the town hall, and they rolled us in these Corvettes, and I can remember, you know, them saying, we're gonna give you a key to the city. I'm thinking, give me a key to the Corvette, it'd be a lot better, right?
It was like being in a movie. You can't believe that this little town was cheering so much for us. And it can only make you think, well, what would have happened if we actually won some games in Italy?
The mayor on board. There's going to be a town hall reception.
I'd like to thank the mayor and the whole town of Kearny, the people, not only for being the greatest people in this country, but the greatest people in the world. And I really mean that, and thanks very much for everything.
Today I was listening to WFAN, and someone called and they said they were from Kearny. The fellow who was on that show, he said, Kearny, that's the soccer capital of the United States.
So you're going out and playing against experienced players who played multiple years in top pro leagues in Europe, and we're going in with guys that are coming from UCLA or Rutgers or NC State or UVA or whatever it might be.
The guys from Kearny and their U.S. teammates now had World Cup experience. They had 4 years to become professional soccer players. John signed for Sheffield Wednesday in England, where he won over doubters by scoring the goal of the year in 1990 and winning the League Cup in 1991. Tab went to Spain. Tony tried his luck in England before coming back to play for the Fort Lauderdale Strikers in the newly created American Professional Soccer League.
For the first time in World Cup history, the eyes of the soccer world are on the United States of America as we prepare to open the 1994 World Cup.
We weren't sure that the World Cup was going to be successful. In fact, we were frightened to death.
FIFA awarded the World Cup to the United States in 1988, so the pressure to qualify for the 1990 tournament had been immense. While U.S. soccer could be proud of making it to Italy, the squad's underwhelming performance meant that expectations were low for '94, both on and off the field.
We were in a situation where we knew that going into that World Cup, every host nation had qualified into the second round of a World Cup. We knew that it was going to be incredibly difficult for us.
On the eve of the first match against Switzerland in Detroit, John wanted to sleep, but Tony couldn't turn off the television.
Night before the game, let's get some rest. What do I do as a professional? Well, we gotta shut it down, man. We gotta get our proper rest and be prepared.
It was O.J. Simpson in this chase down the California highway.
20, 30 minutes go by, and I'm hearing the TV in the background. I'm thinking, yo, Tones, what are you doing?
And I couldn't believe this was happening, and he kept yelling at me, man, we got a World Cup game and it's early tomorrow.
What you wanna do? Togetherness and unity means victory for you and me. With intellect and self-respect, attain whatever you want to get. Togetherness and unity.
I will always remember the game in Detroit at the Silver Dome as being the hottest game I've ever played. It was very humid. If you can imagine putting everybody in a box outside in the sun, and it was unbearable.
They opened with a tie against Switzerland. Okay, it's not a win. That was the game that people felt they should win.
This goal showed that the United States truly had arrived on the world stage in soccer because it was a masterpiece.
The United States picked up their first points in a World Cup since 1950.
The Kearny Army headed for California after the opening match. They were there to watch their childhood friends and root on the USA in a dream matchup against Colombia in the Rose Bowl.
A few of us before it started, we quit our jobs because we knew we couldn't take a month off of work.
It seemed like the entire town of Kearny was in Los Angeles. Everywhere you went, no matter what store, no matter what restaurant, it was like you were on Kearny Avenue and seeing all your buddies.
We're out there for a week, and we took over a pub. I don't think anybody slept. You're hanging out with everybody you grew up with. It was a party that went on for 7 days.
Tony had a sponsored family out there. It was a doctor and his wife. So they arranged yellow school buses to get us from the hotel to the Rose Bowl.
Ladies are okay. Thomas McEwen, you're in seat 4A, your lunchbox sandwich there. And I'm like, oh, I'm out, lady. We're all on the same friggin' bus. And we're getting kegs, and we're going to the game.
And all of a sudden, there's a guy with a drum walking by, a Colombian guy.
We got money, we're on vacation. We need that fucking drum.
Pretty much attacked the guy and, hey, come on, we'll give you money for the drum. The guy walked out of there with like, maybe $100 by the time we got done with him.
Next thing you know, it was boom, boom. Combo's got the drum, and now we got a regiment going into the game.
You're talking about 90,000 people in the Rose Bowl, the biggest game in U.S. soccer history. Our friends are playing in the game.
Kearny Army started U.S. national support of soccer. Before the Kearny Army, there was a bunch of guys in the stands doing tiddlywinks and bullshit. 120 of us out there. Every one of us had American strips on. We had girls in American bikinis. We were there for a party. We knew the party was there, and we took control. And we're up against Colombia, the team that just about everybody, Pele included, had picked to win the World Cup.
We're ready to go, obviously knowing that our challenge is going to be monumental because these were just great players.
Colombia, they're picked to win the World Cup, but we don't give a shit. We got 3 guys from our hometown. I think we're going to win.
Once the game started, it was crazy. Colombia started coming at us like the favorite that they were.
We had that one play where we kind of clear a ball off the line. I think it hit Mike Sorber, and Clavijo was involved in there. And I thought, okay, maybe this is the turning point here where we got our break. They don't score. Now we're going to get a break here somewhere along the way.
And the Romanian keeper made a number of great saves. As Harks now, with Caligiuri overlapping on the far side, sends it inside, it's an own goal! The USA gets the score, Escobar on the own goal.
I looked up, I cut, and I just whipped a shot in as hard as I could, put it into a dangerous area. And I saw Ernie Stewart making a run on the back post of it, and I thought, oh, this will find Ernie maybe for a tap-in. The ball came off of a Colombian player and then just drifted into the net.
And the United States beats Colombia 1-0.
And I was celebrating like crazy, an own goal. Unfortunately, we would find out, but that was, one of the worst things that could have happened to, a gentleman in the game in Colombia.
10 days later, Andres Escobar would be gunned down in Medellin in what was believed to be retribution for the unfortunate own goal.
The aftermath of that was unbelievable. To hold a grudge against them and take a man's life for a game of soccer seemed crazy. That was crazy.
The U.S. finished the first half with a 1-goal lead. They opened the second, pressing for more.
And Dooley in the middle. Ronaldo will send it near side to Chad Ramos. This is good possession here. Ramos sending on to Ernie Stewart, the chip. Score! USA! Ernie Stewart!
And so all I had to do was put it behind the defenders, and Ernie ran onto it, and the rest is history.
Sal, my best friend, we had sort of this crazy, I don't want to call it bet, we had this agreement, or maybe he had this agreement with me.
Hey, Tone, if you get a shutout tomorrow, I'm going to do something. He's like, well, what are you going to do? I said, I think it's got to do something crazy if you get a shutout. And he goes, well, what? What's it going to be? I said, I'm going to jump on the field and run around, take my clothes off and streak. He goes, I don't know if I want to get a shutout.
It's 2-0, and there's a break in the game, and I'm looking around the stadium. I see Sal with his shirt off already. And I'm thinking, we got 4 minutes to go in the game. This guy's going to do it.
He's just been like a big old tree trunk in the middle, and they keep going at him, trying to knock him over, and it doesn't happen. There is a ball on the ground. Saved by Miola. The chip in the score. The chip in the score at almost the 90th minute.
The world doesn't know what I did for them by allowing 1 goal to Colombia.
Well, I know you wanted the shutout.
Yeah, I did. If I could have it all over again, I would have pushed it wide, but he was so close to me. I was just trying to make a play, and the guy knocked the rebound in, but really doesn't matter at this point. We wanted 3 points out of this game. We got it. A lot of people didn't think we could do it.
So I thank Tony for allowing that goal.
This is watching, history happen. Tab and John and Tony, they're just regular guys from New Jersey, and they delivered.
We really just did that. Like, that's insane. We really just did that. We really just celebrated the biggest moment in U.S. soccer history. I remember Tony running around with the American flag afterward, and John running around. I mean, it could bring a tear to my eyes now. It was such an emotional time for us.
I remember turning around, and you had their parents up in the booth that were set up for them. The Miolas, the Harks, the Ramoses, and to be able to look at them and say, oh my God, can you believe we did that? And then to meet up with everybody afterwards, just really, I can feel it right now talking about it.
Why don't you invite all your friends over to my house? And I'm like, Doc, you don't want to do that. That's not a good idea.
They invited us in for a barbecue. We had 2 boatloads of hooligans basically showing up at this doctor's house. We took over this guy's house like we wouldn't believe.
You ever watch Caddyshack? When they have the Caddy Day.
They had overtaken his house, the whole street. They were playing soccer in the street. People were running from the backyard out of the pool. Food all over the place, beer cans all over the place. I thought, these people here in Mission Bay have no idea what the hell just hit them.
Yalka was hanging from the chandeliers. You got a few beers in him, he was like Joe Pesci on crack.
The Kearny Army partied for days and then showed up at the Rose Bowl for the final group game, a loss to Romania. But the USA advanced to the knockout round where they faced powerhouse Brazil.
We got the perfect draw in the round of 16, which was Brazil. No one's expected to beat Brazil.
July 4th against Brazil. And you know what? We beat Colombia. They were favored. We're ready for it. Brazil were ready for us.
We start with John out of the game, right? Had been suspended for an incident that happened in setting up a wall against Romania where he got a yellow card, now has to sit out.
Tab was probably our best player in the first half of that game. Tab could hold the ball, and he's the only player who had the confidence to hold the ball against Brazil.
Deep into the first half, with the match goalless, the USA continued to frustrate the Brazilian Giants.
Brazil knew what they had to do, and they did it. And everybody saw it.
God-fearing moment. I mean, it was just, we gasped. It was just so bad. The way that his body fell when he got hit, the impact that it made.
Leonardo's vicious elbow put the Americans a man up.
I mean, I don't know what getting run over by a train is like, but it sort of felt that. You feel this like really loud noise in your head.
The turning point here is we lose our best player, the most creative player. The one player that could hold the ball against Brazil is now out on injury. We're playing against Brazil. They only have 10 players, but it's like we only have 10 and a half because you can't replace Tab.
By the time we got in the locker room, though, at halftime, you could tell he was in trouble.
That I went to see him at the hospital. It was a very, very scary moment.
Even told by some doctors after that he shouldn't play anymore.
July 4th was not American soccer's Independence Day, but losing by a single goal to the eventual champion was no disgrace. Even in the loss, something important had been gained.
The 1994 World Cup is the biggest turning point ever in United States soccer history. It propels us to a complete different level.
I think a leap from 90 to 94 was amateur to professional.
And we earn the right to say that we want to be the best. And we earn the right to say that, hey, one day we want to win the World Cup.
In the wake of a successful World Cup in 1994, pro soccer returned to the United States. Major League Soccer formed in 1996, and once again, Tab, John, and Tony were soccer pioneers.
Part of the deal was, in U.S. hosting, was that we would start a professional league. So the plans became for MLS.
We didn't have a choice. I mean, FIFA said, we gave you the World Cup, so you create a league.
Well, if the U.S. bombs out, I don't know if Major League Soccer starts. And if Major League
FIFA said, we gave you the World Cup,
things don't happen.
The league was supposed to start in 94, 95. Nope, it's not going to start until 96. Is it really going to happen? I mean, is this really going to come together? Do we have the money and the ownership groups? And
when I got back to Spain at Real Betis, we had just gained promotion back to La Liga. And now the club knows that I'm going to be out for the next 6 months, so they obviously brought some new reinforcements, and now I lost my position on the team.
Tab decided the time was right to come back to the Americas. He was set to sign a contract with Mexican power Tigres, but then he got a phone call about the new professional league back home.
I said, Tab, you know, we're starting this league. Why don't we, instead of doing this as a signing, let's do this as a loan. So MLS will loan you to Tigres. Well, that was all okay, except MLS didn't have a league. So we were kind of loaning them out of thin air.
They don't have teams, they don't have anything. How do I sign a contract for a league that doesn't exist?
I wanted him to be the first player signed the league for a lot of different reasons. One, he's obviously an American player, World Cup star, Hispanic, and an attacking player. You put all of those things together, and it made a lot of sense for us to sign him as the first player.
I thought, by me signing with the league, that it would encourage other players like, Eric Ronaldo and John Harks and the big players that we had playing around the world, that it would encourage them to come and play here and to help to start the league.
When Tab Ramos was the first player signed in the league, he's the first player we went after.
When I thought about coming back home in the United States and play, I thought that I would only want to play at Giant Stadium.
And playing for the Metro Stars, the area's own great star of the 1990-1994 World Cup, Tab Ramos.
And obviously my number one priority was to come back to Giant Stadium, where I felt like I had unfinished business.
When we started with the national team, and then when we started in Major League Soccer, we had two jobs. One was to play and be prepared to play. The other one was to promote the game of soccer.
These guys that really were giants that ended up lifting the game in the World Cup were now playing in MLS, and I was playing with them in front of 69,000 at the Rose Bowl. This was a dream come true.
The inaugural MLS Cup between DC United and the LA Galaxy drew over 34,000 people to Foxborough Stadium in Massachusetts. Unfortunately, it also drew Hurricane Lily. The game was played in a frigid downpour, a less than ideal showcase for a new league trying to crown its first champion and win over the country.
We have to pull it off because it's on live on ABC. And so we've got to get this game off.
And they came from behind and beat us, and Harks is lifting the Rothenberg trophy there. And I was thinking, wow, this is professional sports. This is really happening. America has a professional league, and there's John Harks lifting the trophies.
Though not without missteps, the growth of MLS since that first season has been measured in milestones. As the league has expanded, so has the popularity of the game in the United States. There are now soccer towns across the country where boys and girls dream of playing in a World Cup. Soccer is part of the fabric of the nation.
We have great young players. I think we have better players than we've ever had before. Many of them that are really hungry to do something new and to be the next guys that'll lead U.S. soccer to something big.
But the future of U.S. soccer is still being written in Kearny. The town has changed. There are more Peruvian restaurants than fish and chips shops along Kearny Avenue now. But the language everyone speaks will always be soccer. Kids still play for Thistle FC, and John Harks' brother Jimmy coaches in town as their father did. Bill Galka is the head coach at Kearny High, which remains a powerhouse, winning a state title in 2017. These days, Kearny kids dream of playing at Red Bull Arena, whether in the Kearny-Harrison rivalry game or as professionals in Major League Soccer. And of course, there's always a wait to play at the courts.
Hey everybody, this is Grant Pearson. Played soccer in Freehold, New Jersey for the longest time. Hope everybody's doing well out there in the world. I hope that everybody's healthy. God bless you all, and Freehold is definitely the soccer capital of New Jersey.